Hello everybody. I thought I would read you the finishing part of the story of Mr Phobe's Fear, and it was from the book of The World's Worst Teachers by David Walliams. The last time we read the story, we found out that Mr Phobe was a head teacher and he had a fear of children. And we'd gone back in time to his first day of school, which was at Halsbow's School for Horrible Boys. We had discovered that his first lesson wasn't really going to plan, and he was stood in the front of the class, covered in custard, with a toilet plunger stuck on his head. So let's read on and see what happens. Noticing the blackboard was awash with the rudest words known to man. Mogwash, tubal, plunter, boomtang, fripper, minky moo, hob, wob, hoody-boody and pomdy-bop. He quickly rubbed them off. Next, the teacher began chalking his name on the board. Because he was so nervous, his hand was wobbling. The chalk was tapping against the board. It was impossible to keep his hand steady, so instead of writing Mr Phobe, he actually scrawled something else, entirely different. Mr Foo. As soon as Mr Phobe turned round and revealed what he'd scrawled on the board, the brutes hooted with laughter again. Ha ha ha! This was immediately followed by calls of, "Good morning, Mrs Foo!" Being children, they found this hilarious because it sounded a lot like poo. And for some reason, poo is always funny. Little did Mr Phobe know that his ordeal at the hands of Halsbow's boys was only just beginning. Now, today I am taking over from Mr. The teacher's nerves were getting the better of him. The poor man couldn't get his words out. "Mr Meatballs," suggested Mungo, the gobbiest one at the back of the class. "Ha ha ha! No, Mr Monkey Doo-Doo," asked Doobie, the next gobbiest one near the back of the class. "Ha ha ha! No, Mr Mardybum," said another. No, Mr Mashed Potato. No, Mr Minger. Mr Phobe couldn't take any more. No, he screamed. It was so loud the walls wobbled. Finally, silence descended upon the classroom, for that was the first time in years. It was not to last. For a glorious golden moment, Mr Phobe believed he'd won, finally, their respect. How wrong he was. "Woo!" cried the entire class. "Now come on, settle down," he ordered. On Mungo's prompts, the horrors all repeated exactly what their new supply teacher had just said. "Come on now, settle down," came a chorus of replies. The teacher shook his head and rolled his eyes. "This is just stupid." "This is just stupid." "Stop repeating everything I say." "Stop repeating everything I say." "Right, that's it. I've had enough." "Right, that's it. I've had enough." Mr Phobe couldn't take any more. He closed his eyes. As soon as he did, he felt a tomato explode across his face. "No one tell him who threw it," said a voice. "Right you are, Doobie," came a reply. "Oh." Mr Phobe opened his eyes and began to speak, slowly and softly. I want to tell you kids something. I know it's not cool or trendy, but I became a teacher because I wanted to make the world a better place. You kids are the future. If I can make just one of you the best you can be, then I can give myself a big pat on the back. His voice was growing louder as his speech gathered momentum. So come on, kids, who is with me? Who wants to be the bestest they can be? Who wants to learn about the Industrial Revolution? The boys all leaped to their feet and burst into applause. In unison, they shouted, "Yes!" A proud tear welled in the teacher's eye. He had turned these beasts around. "Sir," began Mungo, "I think I speak for all of the class by saying thank you from the bottom of our hearts and the hearts of our bottoms for inspiring us." "It's my great pleasure," croaked Mr. Phobe. "Let's begin the history lesson. Let's find out about the transference to manufacturing processes from 1760 to 1840. Let's learn. Let's grow, kids. Let's reach for the stars." "Let's do it," they all replied. "We can't wait to learn about the increasing use of steam and water power, the development of machine tools, and the rise of the mechanicalised factory system," exclaimed Mungo. "Yes," replied Mr. Phobe, punching the air. "Just take a seat and then we'll begin." Mungo's grin oozed around the classroom until it spread across the faces of all of the boys. "Kids, let's do this," proclaimed Mr. Phobe, slamming himself down on the chair. Instantly, he wished he hadn't. The horrors had covered his seat with hundreds of drawing pins. "Ow!" screamed Mr. Phobe. "As well you might know if you had hundreds of drawing pins stuck to your bottom." He was in pain. In desperation, the teacher began hopping around the classroom. Hoppity hop, hippity hop. And that didn't work. Neither did jumping. Doing, doing, doing. Or cartwheeling. All this achieved was to make the brutes howl even louder with laughter. "It feels like my body is on fire!" cried Mr. Phobe as he charged towards the classroom door. His foot became stuck in an old tin bucket, but he carried on regardless. "Water! Water!" he cried as he hurled along the corridor. All the terrors followed. Clutching his bottom, Mr. Phobe found the nearest bathroom. He charged inside and found the closest cubicle. With no time to lose, the teacher lifted the seat and plunged his bottom into the bowl. "Ah!" he sighed as the cold water lapped around his burning buttocks. To anyone who might be passing, Mr. Phobe was quite a sight. The teacher was covered from head to toe in custard, with a tomato splattered across his face, a toilet plunger stuck to his forehead, and a bottom wedged down the loo. In no time, the swine caught up with him. One by one, their nasty little faces appeared around the door. "Ha ha ha!" they all laughed. Mungo shook his head and took charge. "Quiet, boys," he ordered, and they were quiet. "Wonderful speech, Mrs. Fu." "Thank you," he muttered, trying to make the best of this most undignified position he'd found himself in. "I am so sorry it happened, Mrs. Fu," Mungo continued, clutching his chest to appear even more sincere than he sounded. "That's quite all right," began the teacher. Mungo, I suppose accidents do happen," he continued, trying to put his brave face on things. "But on your very first day at How's Bells. What rotten luck. How is your bottom now, Mrs. Fu?" "Still piping hot, I'm afraid," And it's Mr. Phobe. That's what I said. Mrs. Foo, replied Mungo, smirking. Maybe you need some more cold water. Oh no, I don't think. Let me help, sir. With that, the boy reached across the teacher and pressed the flush. No! cried Mr. Phobe. The poor man didn't stand a chance. With his bottom so far down the bowl, the suction from below dragged him downwards. Help! he yelled, but it was too late. Mr. Phobe was flushed down the toilet. Kasplunk! Swirl! Farewell, Mrs. Foo! called out the Munsters. Doobie, grinning devilishly, whipped a stopwatch out of his pocket. Mr. Phobe lasted a mere 4 minutes and 17 seconds at the school. That's a new record! exclaimed Mungo. Well done us! Hooray! Meanwhile, Mr. Phobe was being sucked through a never-ending maze of pipes and tubes. Finally, with the toilet plunger still stuck to his head, he found himself coming up for air. It was then that Mr. Phobe realised that it was impossible. Things had taken a turn for the worse. The much worse. He was in a sewage plant. Pongy woo. From that fateful day forward, Mr. Phobe did everything he possibly could to avoid children at all costs. The safest way, he thought, was to become a headmaster. Then he could hide in his office all day, shuffling his paperwork and not meeting any of the little horrors. Little horrors just like you. Not really. So if one day you see Mr. Phobe locking himself in a locker or diving into a hedge or furiously burying himself in the football pitch, please remember something. It's not his fault. He's terrified of children. After all, Mr. Phobe was once flushed down a toilet. Kasplash. Poor Mr. Phobe. Well, that's the end of our story. It's a good job our head teacher isn't like that. Our head teacher is really helpful and is always there for any of us. Not like Mr. Phobe. We are really lucky. Well, enjoy the rest of your day and the sunshine, and I hope to see you soon. Stay safe. Bye-bye.